This is the new iPhone SE, Apple's follow-up to the wildly popular 2016 iPhone SE, and the headline feature? It starts at £419 for an iPhone. That's a big deal. This is the cheapest it's been in a long time to get access to not only a brand new device from Apple, but to that much coveted ecosystem. Despite its overly similar looks to the iPhone 8, this is more than just a rebrand of that model. The main upgrade here is Apple's A13 Bionic chip, which is a bleeding edge mobile processor, which not only means it's going to be really fast, it means you're going to get iOS updates for around 4 to 5 years. So what's the catch? Well, let's jump into those first. The camera on the SE isn't as good as the iPhone 11 series. Let's get that out of the way first. But that doesn't mean it's a bad camera. For the price point, it's actually pretty good. For all intents and purposes, this is the same hardware camera-wise as the iPhone 8. But what makes it different and better than that is Apple's A13 chip, which gives the sensor a touch more oomph. In good lighting situations, you'd be hard pushed to see any real world difference between this and any other high-end phone camera. And if you've used an iPhone before, the colours, contrast and detail are going to feel very similar to what you've known for a long time. Overall, it's just pretty darn good. Despite only having one lens, Apple have brought over portrait mode to the front and back cameras, which is a really nice addition to have. And as ever, sometimes it can be totally convincing, and sometimes, well, not so much. Video quality is typically excellent too. Apple have a lead here which just can't seem to be matched, and it goes all the way up to 4K 60p too, which is pretty awesome considering the low price point. The only thing the camera doesn't have is a night mode, and I think that's a real bummer. In dark situations, you're reminded very quickly that this is a budget-focused device. The results between this and the iPhone 11 series is stark. I know Apple needs to make this different enough from the more expensive devices to ensure people go up to those models, but I can't help feeling like leaving out night mode just isn't the way to do it. Overall, this camera is totally capable and a solid upgrade if you're coming from an earlier device from Apple. Just don't expect it to blow you away. I've got to admit, I was low-key excited to see what the battery life was going to be like on the new iPhone SE. With the 11 series being such battery troopers, I was really hoping the story would be the same with this phone, but sadly it's not quite as good, and I think that's the only main stumbling point of this device. Battery life is just fine, average, okay. For most people it will get you through the whole day, no problem, and more importantly, if you're upgrading from something like an older SE or an iPhone 8 or lower, it's going to have better battery life than that. However, it's no road warrior like the iPhone 11 series is. As ever though, battery life is becoming an increasingly hard metric to cover because everyone uses their phone so differently, and even screen on time now isn't really a good measure of a phone's battery life. But to give it some context, I'm usually getting around 3 hours of screen on time on the iPhone SE with about 10% battery left at the end of the day. To put that in perspective, my iPhone 11 would get me around the same time, but I usually have around 40% left in the tank. It's a bit of a shame. I was hoping the A13 chip in here would balance out that somewhat anemic 1800 mAh battery life, and I'm sure it's still doing a really great job, but I think it just goes to show processor optimization and battery management can only go so far, and at the end of the day, a bigger battery is just better for staying power. Okay, let's wind it back to the physicals. You'd be forgiven if you took the new SE for an iPhone 6, 7 or 8 because it's literally the same design. Apple has taken a if it ain't broke don't fix it approach to the SE, and for a lot of people, I think that familiarity is going to be really appealing. That old design language also stretches to the screen, which is a 720p LCD panel surrounded top and tail by a large bezel, and it's fine. A lot of people have mentioned it doesn't get as bright as they'd hoped it would, but I haven't really noticed that too much. Colours are good too and don't feel washed out or anything like that, and I think as far as LCD panels go, it's totally acceptable. The biggest drawback is actually just the amount of content it can display. As it's only 4.7 inches, some interfaces and messaging apps are starting to feel really cramped, and I generally find myself scrolling a lot more within apps just to see more content. Touch ID also returns and it is as quick as ever, even more so than Face ID in some situations, especially if you're in direct sunlight or for instance wearing a mask. There's also a good chance if you're grabbing the iPhone out of your pocket or off a surface, you're most likely grabbing it by the sensor anyway, meaning it's already unlocked by the time you look at it. While I don't personally miss this dated design, over the time I have been using it, I've really appreciated the smaller form factor. Being able to use this phone completely with one hand is a real boon, and I didn't realise how much I missed it. You can pick up the SE in black, white and red now, and I actually went for the red this time, which isn't a colour I would normally go for, but when I opened the box I was really blown away. It's a gorgeous deep shade of scarlet, and if you are on the fence about it, I would honestly say just go for it. It's really nice. The design may well be dated, sure, but the performance is far from it. The SE is razor quick and matches the iPhone 11 series blow for blow in all daily tasks, even though it has less RAM. This thing tears through iOS nicely, apps open quickly, games load fast, and other tasks like photo editing are a complete breeze. There's not even a hint of sluggishness to the system, again another benefit of that Apple A13 chip. There's a really certain feeling here of headroom in the device which is good, and it should mean that the SE will stay just as quick for a good few years. Let's face it, if you've got friends or family that are holding on to their older iPhone models and don't fancy the prices of the iPhone 11 series, then the iPhone SE is a really easy phone to recommend. It's the same safe, familiar design, an updated camera, a better processor, and a guaranteed lifespan of around 4 to 5 years, all at a reasonable price. If you're into mobile technology though, or an enthusiast of any kind, then I think it's fair to say that this phone just outright isn't made for you, and you may be wondering why it's getting so many good reviews across the board when there's so many different alternatives out there. And I think the truth is, for the market this phone is designed for, people that don't really care about bezel size or screen refresh rate or battery size or camera specs or processors, this is going to be such an easy, safe and cheap option to go for, and I really do think Apple are going to sell bucket loads of them. So that rounds up the review of the iPhone SE. If you're going to get one, let me know in the comments below underneath that like button, and pop a subscribe on the way out, and I will see you all in the next one.